Welcome to another episode of Sports Vibe. I'm your host Arnav Sarkar here with college football quarterfinals starting tomorrow in the playoff. Been looking forward to that for a long time. I'm also gonna review the first round before we get to that and recap NFL Week 17. 1 week left in the standings as the playoff picture starts to come into clear vision here. Most of the teams already decided. Just some playoff seeding to go. And get finalized. But Lions Niners later on tonight. Recording this on a Monday night. But just a lot to talk about, a lot to break down. Actually, I wanted to start with the NFL first. Because the Giants really messed everything up. They had the number one pick in their grasp, and for some reason, Drew Lock decided to turn into Tom Brady, go for 309 yards and 4 touchdowns. Malik Neighbors went for 171 and 2 touchdowns, and the Giants basically kissed the number one pick goodbye. The Colts basically pulled the Falcons and cost themselves their playoff spot. So themselves in a very similar situation. Joe Flacco, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, but the defense was just really sloppy, allowing hapless Giants team to get a punt return, or a kickoff return touchdown. Malik Neighbors with a couple deep touchdowns. Darius Slayton, who's been basically useless for this team, caught a touchdown. I mean, it's just been ridiculous. I mean, I do like Drew Lock as a quarterback, but he really just set Giants franchise back. They slipped to the 4th pick. The Browns and Titans likely to pick a quarterback now, and the bigger problem is that they lost on a quarterback, but the chances that with the Eagles next week things get really interesting because they might end up screwing the Giants further. The Eagles have basically nothing to play for, although Saquon Barkley is going for the rushing record, and I've been a big advocate on Saquon Barkley playing that game no matter what and bringing the Eagles starters out there. I've seen, I guess, Giants fans divided on this. A lot of Eagles fans divided on this too. I mean, I'm obviously being selfish and advocating for the draft pick here, but I mean, I don't understand why you would decide to sit Saquon Barkley, not let him get the record, sit Jalen Hurts, not let him get the rhythm. I mean, they're obviously going to need it for the playoffs anyway, so I don't understand why the thinking would be to rest the starters. I mean, injuries are a part of football. I mean, obviously, I would not wish injuries, but it's a record that like Saquon Barkley deserves to break, or at least get a chance to break. I mean, obviously, like, I think they should go for it. I'm obviously going to be selfish here and advocate for the Giants draft pick because as much as I wouldn't want Saquon Barkley to break the record against my team, I don't want the Eagles to rest all their starters and have the Giants basically beat them after they already beat the Colts, who've played their starters in a must-win game. I don't want the Giants to cruise to victory over the Eagles' backups, including Saquon Barkley sitting and losing out on the record. And I think that'd just be really unfortunate if the Eagles were to put their Super Bowl aspirations ahead of Saquon Barkley getting the record. I know that's probably what they should do, but like obviously I'm going to advocate against it. I hope for their sake and for our sake that we end up playing the starters, or they end up playing the starters at least for a half, at least get the offensive starters, the O-line, Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley into the game. Hashtag PlayQuan. A lot of Eagles fans probably on board with this too, but many of them are not because they don't want to risk the injury and they want to get some rest before the playoffs. But obviously, like, I'm not here for your playoff run. I don't want the Eagles to make a deep run the playoffs, but more importantly, right now I'm concerned about that draft pick. So please play Saquon Barkley, have him run all over the defense, play your other offensive starters, do whatever you guys got to do, but make sure they don't beat us, and make sure he at least gets a chance to break the record. And if we just decide to put guys in the box and prevent him from getting it and have you guys beat us through the air, then go for it. But at least I think Saquon Barkley, in all seriousness, deserves the chance at the record that he's worked so hard for. I mean, if Eagles fans don't want that, they're being more selfish than Giants fans were being when they decided to boost Saquon Barkley on the way out. So I mean, that's my 2 cents on that. Hopefully they make the right decision and play Saquon Barkley, play the other starters, and don't screw up our draft pick any further. But I know the Giants are obviously going to make the wrong decision and play all their starters, and they're probably going to have a great game. So whatever the Eagles decide to do, the Giants are going to screw it up anyway. But I'm hoping the Eagles can at least make the right decision and let Saquon Barkley chase the record because, I mean, it's a once in a lifetime record. I mean, the Super Bowl isn't guaranteed anyway. I mean, as we know, the Chiefs are going to be in the conversation. The AFC's loaded. The Chiefs have a really good offense. They have the refs on their side. The NFC's loaded this year. There's no guarantee that the Eagles even make the Super Bowl or get there, let alone win it. So, I mean, why deny Saquon Barkley, your star running back, of the record? When that's much more achievable than the Super Bowl. I mean, I think Eagles fans really need to get their head out of the gutter here and allow Saquon Barkley to play so our draft pick doesn't get screwed up. Obviously, I'm going to be selfish and advocate for the draft pick over all else, but I really do think that Saquon Barkley deserves a chance at the record. That being said, we'll see what happens. I mean, either way, I do think the Giants are going to end up playing their starters and win. So, it's up to them. I mean, what the Eagles want to do, my guess is they're probably going to end up playing starters in the first half, or at least allow Saquon to get the record and then set everyone and watch the Giants win. But who knows for sure? It's up to the Giants to, do the right thing, but of course they won't. So as usual, we're relying on other teams, and that never works well. But that's my rant about Saquon Barkley deserving to get the rushing record, and on top of that, allowing the Giants to maintain a half decent draft pick as opposed to falling all the way to ninth. But in any case, while we're on the subject of the NFL, the Chiefs, although they've gotten a lot of devil magic wins, a lot of fluky wins, they knocked off the Pittsburgh Steelers 29-10. Their offense is starting to look the part. 15-1 for a league's best record in the NFL, although they might they're probably gonna, speaking of resting starters, they're likely to rest starters with the Broncos in a must-win playoff game. So that'll be interesting. The Chiefs looking to rest their starters with the number 1 seed locked up, and they don't have any accolades to get it. The Broncos need to win to get into the playoffs. So we'll see. I mean, I think Kansas City, the stars are not going to play, but the backups and maybe some of the other starters that don't usually get a lot of playing time, they might play. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But anyway, and going back to the last game for Kansas City and Pittsburgh here, 29-10, Steelers did not look the part. After starting the season 10-3, 3 straight losses to contending teams and the Eagles, the Ravens, and now the Chiefs. And Steelers are still in the playoffs. The Ravens right now have the driver's seat in the division with the season split, as well as a better overall record. So they'll be looking to clinch that against the hapless Cleveland Browns, who also lead the Giants. But yeah, I mean, last couple of weeks the Chiefs knocked off the Texans 29-17, and then I believe, or 27-19 rather, and pretty solid win on both sides of the ball, and Kareem Hunt able to kind of ice it with the Chiefs up by 8 points. This week against Pittsburgh, just dominant. Travis Kelce got going, Xavier Worthy, Justin Watson really got going, and the Chiefs, I think, are going to be one of the big contenders. And for a while, I was a little bit skeptical about this, but I think they really do have the offense to complement their defense. Their defense, obviously, Chris Jones, they've been insane. They've had all this close game winning, but I mean, they're really starting to open up the offense. Mahomes has looked better as of late. They got 2 good backs in Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco, and besides Justin Watson, who is not even one of the main receivers, I mean, they have DeAndre Hopkins, who can be a wide receiver 1, and they have Hollywood Brown now on the line, Xavier Worthy, the speedster. So, I mean, they got 3 good receivers, 2 good running backs, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, a good defense, and the devil magic. I think that's going to be hard for anyone to beat. I was thinking maybe the Ravens or the Bills, with their prolific offenses, would be able to knock off Kansas City. But if the Chiefs have the offense to match the defense, and we know they do now, I think it's going to be tough sledding. That being said, Baltimore is looking really good. The Chiefs did beat the Texans by a score of 27-19. Baltimore dominated them 31-2. So I know we're not going with head-to-head victories here, but that one does look pretty dominant against the Texans team, who's first in the AFC South. However, just 9-7 now. Baltimore really getting things going. Derrick Henry, monster day on the ground. Lamar through the air, and I'm sure on the ground as usual. He had a 48-yard run, and it was really all Baltimore. 31-2. They're looking good. Justin Tucker missed some field goals against Philly, but besides that, they've stamped out the Giants. knocked off the Pittsburgh Steelers, and even dominated the Texans as Lamar looks to get the MVP from Josh Allen. He's definitely making a case to do that. Seahawks taking on the Bears in the Thursday game, 6-3, ugly win against Chicago. Probably one of the ugliest you'll see all season long. One field goal in the first quarter by the Seahawks, won by the Bears in the second quarter, and the game winner in the second quarter, Jason Myers. And I mean, 6-3 is just absolutely disgusting. I mean, this isn't Big Ten West football. This is the NFL. I mean, I don't know what these players are out there doing, but clearly it was a very defensive game. Caleb Williams, just 16 for 20 for 122 and a pick, and Geno Smith, 17 for 23, high efficiency, 160. But just an ugly game, not much to say. The Seahawks now out of the playoff race after the Rams. The Commanders basically got themselves in with the Rams. So on to the next. Chargers taking on the Patriots blowout win. They're going to be in the playoffs at 10-5 as one of the AFC's wild cards. Not really too much to say about that one, although the Patriots now with the loss slide into the number one pick. Drake May in at quarterback, so hopefully they end up picking Travis Hunter for Giants fans' sakes. I don't think they need another quarterback anyway. That being said, who really knows for sure? But Justin Herbert had a good game, 281 yards, 3 touchdowns. Lad McConkey with 2 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins, 76 and touchdowns. So all San Diego, Los Angeles, in New England. I remember that being a playoff matchup a few years ago. Broncos taking on the Bengals. Bengals with the overtime thriller to keep their playoff hopes alive. We'll get to all the playoff scenarios later, but Joe Burrow really putting the team on his back. 39 for 49, 412 yards and 3 touchdowns, 131 and 3 touchdowns for T. Higgins. Just like a back and forth game, a lot of offense in the fourth quarter, and in overtime, the Bengals could have sealed it with a win, but their kicker missed it and gave the Broncos a chance. But it was Joe Burrow getting the football back and scoring the game-winning touchdown. They're 8-8, looking to keep their playoff hopes alive. But the Broncos still in the mix at 9-7, and so are the Dolphins. So we'll get to the tiebreaker situations a little bit later in the episode. But yeah. I mean, and then the Rams beat the Cardinals 13-9. They're the NFC West winners now. The Eagles beat the Cowboys 41-7. Behind Kenny Pickett, going for 143. Them playing their backups, Tanner McKee getting into that one as well. Devontae Smith had a good game. Saquon Barkley, 167 yards, making the work a lot easier for that last game, where he only needs 100. So I mean, hopefully they do the right thing and play him. No guarantees. But I'm hoping. I'm hoping they play him. I really need them to play him for our sake and his too. I mean, even though I, did not really like the move to Philadelphia, I think he deserves it. I think they should let him go for it, but we'll have to see. Of course, the main incentive for me is the draft pick. But Tampa Bay taking on Carolina, 48-14, domination as Tampa has their drivers their foot on. Basically on the division at 9-7, and with the Falcons loss, they're one game ahead with one game to play. So we'll have to see how that one goes. The Jets absolutely embarrassed themselves. Aaron Rodgers threw 2 interceptions, and they didn't start scoring until Tyrod Taylor got in. Then they scored 2 touchdowns. Pretty embarrassing, but before that, all Buffalo as they look to fine-tune before the playoffs. As I mentioned, the Giants did a great job at the worst time with Drew Lock and Malik Neighbors and the gang knocking off Indianapolis and eliminating them from playoff contention. Really sad. Another team that did themselves no favors for the future, the Raiders, 25-10 win over the hapless New Orleans Saints. So that's 2 wins in a row for the Raiders, who gave up the number 1 pick last week. So not looking good. They have the 8th pick, and that's exactly a situation I'm trying to avoid with the Giants if they beat Philly, who's set to rest likely a lot of starters. And maybe even Saquon Barkley, but we don't know that yet, how long the offensive starters are going to play. So if they even do play at all. But other than that, the Jaguars knocking off the Titans, hapless teams. Titans move up to the 2 spot with the loss. The Dolphins knocking off the Browns, who are now in the 3 spot. Dolphins trying to keep their playoff hopes alive at 8-8. The Vikings with the absolute thriller win over the Packers. Got to watch part of this one. They're up 27-10. Green Bay tries to climb back into it. Sam Darnold absolutely cooking, 377 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. But the Vikings able to knock off Jordan Love and the Packers, who, despite their record, have struggled against the teams who have been better than them, such as the Lions, the Eagles, and Minnesota. Green Bay in the playoff picture here with the 6, likely with the 6 or 7 seed, depending on the Commanders. And the Falcons, speaking of the Commanders, Commanders win a wild win in overtime against Atlanta. So Jane Daniels, 227, 3 touchdowns and a pick, and 127 on the ground. Washington fell behind 17-7, but they were able to climb themselves out of that hole. Atlanta able to score the game-tying touchdown on a 4th down play. Michael Penix finding the end zone. He's looked pretty solid. 223 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick for the Falcons, trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. But it was Washington able to score late into the overtime period on a Zach Ertz touchdown. So Washington now, the Commanders are in the playoffs against the Falcons, who are now 8-8. And then tonight's contest against the Lions, with the Lions against the 49ers, essentially meaningless, because even if the Lions are able to, even if they lose, they have a chance for the number 1 seed in the NFC, with all the marbles lying on the Sunday night showdown against Minnesota. Both teams currently sitting at they don't have the same record right now, but the Vikings 14-2, the Lions 13-2. Even if the Lions lose, they can win the 1 seed back with a win over the Vikings. So all the marbles on next Sunday. So it's going to be a great division clincher. We've seen these division clincher games in the past on Sunday Night Football, but none like this. I mean, the number 1 seed in the NFC, the number 1 seed in the NFC North, the number 1 seed, the playoff bye, and the NFC North championship, all decided on a Sunday Night Football between 2 of the most consistent, best teams in all of the NFL. And I would argue that likely they are probably better than the Chiefs, although the Chiefs are cooking at the right time. So hopefully one of them ends up beating the Eagles in the playoffs, and with that number 1 seed. We'll see if it's Minnesota or the Vikings. The Vikings or the Lions. Either way, the NFC's number 1 is going through the NFC North and indoors. So that's a terrific matchup for Sunday Night Football. Can the Lions stop the Vikings receivers? Who's going to be better here? I don't really know, honestly. I mean, I think the Vikings probably have more weapons right now, and the Lions don't necessarily play the best in big games. So I'd go with Minnesota here. Big turnaround for the way they were, just a couple years ago. Even last year, I mean, last year they were floundering around. I don't even, with Kirk Cousins and Nick Mullins, and I don't even know what they're doing. 2 years ago, they lost a lot of one-score games. This year, or they won a lot of one-score games, but they were frauds. So this year, the Vikings look legit with Sam Darnold. The Lions under Jared Goff, great team as well. They've looked dominant at times, but they've also tended to struggle against the best competition. But we'll see what happens. Can the Lions beat the Vikings? Can the Vikings beat the Lions? Who's going to get the number 1 seed in the NFC? In the entire conference, after both teams leading the most competitive division in all of football with superb records and just dominating the competition. But that's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to that one. We'll have to see what happens for sure. But I don't know. I think the Vikings could take it, but we'll have to see for sure next Sunday night. But that's a Sunday night game. So many other games to get to on the schedule here. Browns Ravens on Saturday. Ravens, I'm looking to improve their seeding for the playoffs. Bengals Steelers, Pittsburgh. The Ravens are up a game, so I guess the Steelers would have to win. Baltimore the Steelers would have to win and have the Ravens lose, basically. So Ravens should be playing for something, making it more likely for the Browns to lose. Panthers Falcons look to stay alive. Bucks in the driver's seat. Texans Titans, Giants Eagles. I've already mentioned the whole Saquon Barkley thing. I really hope they play him. Again, no guarantees. Jaguars Colts, Commanders Cowboys. Commanders and Packers in the 6-7 race. So the Packers taking on the Bears. the Bears looking to Packers looking to improve their seeding. Caleb Williams likely to start one final time, the number 1 pick for Chicago. A promising start to the season went sideways as they're the only team in that division to not even be competitive. They're 4-12. Other than that, Saints, Bucks, Bills, Patriots. The Patriots now in the number 1. The Chargers taking on the Raiders. Niners, Cardinals. Chiefs, Broncos. That's an interesting one for the playoff race. The Chiefs likely to start their Chiefs likely to sit their starters. Not all of them, but the main ones at least. The Broncos needing a win for the playoffs. Seahawks, Rams. Rams already clinched the division. Seahawks now out of the playoffs. So no need really for that. That game doesn't affect seeding at all or for the playoffs or anything like that. But we'll have to see how that works. The Dolphins taking on the Jets, and the Dolphins still alive. The Jets likely to looking to, I guess, get a win or maybe a loss. Horrible end to the season for them. The Jets have just been absolutely notoriously bad, but for all the talent they have, it's way more inexcusable for them to be 4-12 than the Giants to be 3-13. But such is life, I guess. And finally, the last game here that I have to get to for the preview. I already talked about Vikings Lions, but I guess the playoff picture and the playoff standings and all of that. Just to go through these scenarios here. Let's see. A lot to decide. Obviously the Ravens 1 game ahead of Pittsburgh, so they need a win. The Steelers would need a win and a Ravens loss to clinch the division. Both teams facing the other 2 teams in their division, and they both play on Saturday. So Steelers need some help. Both of them are in the playoffs. The Broncos clinched a playoff berth with a win or a tie, so they're in the driver's seat for that last berth. Cincinnati would need a Bengals win against the Steelers. They also need a Broncos loss and a Dolphins loss or a tie. And the Dolphins, in that second spot, they would need a Dolphins win, of course, and a Broncos loss. So right now the Broncos in the driver's seat, likely against the Chiefs backup. The other 2 would need help. So if the Broncos can defeat the Chiefs backups, they're in the playoffs. In the NFC, the Lions and the Vikings going for all the marbles. Basically, whoever wins gets whoever wins ends up getting the 1 seed. If there's a tie, then the Lions would need would get the 1 seed as long as they beat the Niners. And if the Lions lose, then if the Vikings win or tie, they get the 1 seed. But basically, a win for the Lions would give, regardless of what happens, unless there's a tie. I guess the tie would be in the favor of Detroit, but as long as they beat the 49ers. But other than that, as long as the Lions, even if they win or lose, basically it all comes down to can they beat Minnesota, because the winner would get the 1. Not expecting a tie to happen there. So Tampa Bay in the driver's seat for the NFC South. They need a win or a tie. The Falcons with a loss. They could either get a win or a Falcons loss, but the Falcons would need the help. They need a win and have a Tampa Bay loss. So the Bucks in the driver's seat for the division, going against the Saints there. And those are all for playoff scenarios. Now to look at the picture, before we get into some college football here, the Chiefs in the 1. Either way, that one's locked up. 2 games ahead of Buffalo with 1 to play. So likely to rest their starters and get the Broncos into the dance. Kansas City, the AFC goes through Arrowhead, and good luck to the NFL with their offense humming to go along with that defense. Buffalo, Baltimore are going to be the 2 main contenders to beat them in the AFC. The Texans, I think they have the AFC South on lock. So they're right now in the 4. The Steelers right now in the 5. That could switch with Baltimore. The Chargers in the 6. And then the Broncos right now in the 7. I'm not sure if they would be able to overtake the Chargers. I guess it depends on what happens elsewhere. But right now the Broncos are in the hunt. slotted right now in the 7 and most likely to make the playoffs. But the Dolphins and Bengals right now on the bubble. Everyone else eliminated. The Colts did themselves no favors by losing to the hapless Giants. Really screwed over two fan bases, their own and Indy. So besides that, in the NFC, Vikings, the winner of Minnesota, Detroit will get the 1, the other one will get the 5. Philly right now locked into the 2. So, as I keep mentioning, hopefully they still play Saquon anyway. The Rams right now at 3. NFC North winner, West winners right now at 10 and 6, and that's confirmed. So the NFC South right now in the hands of the Buccaneers. If they win, they're in. So they're likely going to be the 4. The Commanders and Packers right now going for 6 and 7. They're tied. So I guess whoever wins, Commanders with the tiebreaker puts themselves in the driver's seat for that 6th seed. So if everything holds, our first round matchups would likely be Broncos taking on the Bills in Buffalo, the Chargers going to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, and the Steelers visiting Houston to take on the Texans. That would be the first round in the AFC. In the NFC, we have the Packers going to Philly to take on the Eagles, most likely in the first round. The Commanders going to the Rams, which is a winnable game, I would say, for them. And then the Buccaneers going to the Lions or the Vikings, not really sure. Whoever's going to lose that one. And the other one being the NFC North, or the NFC champions, regular season champions at least. But yeah, it should be a really interesting playoff for sure. In the NFL, a lot riding on this last week, but really excited for the playoffs. This year's been a lot clearer. It seems like all the teams that should make the playoffs are in, and all the ones who haven't really lived up to the mark are out. Well, maybe a couple of exceptions to that, but I would say so far there hasn't really been too much of a muddy race. It seems like a lot of the hapless teams are out. A lot of the best teams are in, and I expect a really good tournament in January. We'll see if the Chiefs do end up repeating or not, but in the AFC, I see the Bills and the Ravens as the biggest threats, obviously, with their offenses able to meet the mark. The Chiefs have had a little bit of a down year, but seem to be getting it at the right time. And, of course, being at home, the way their luck's been, I think they have the offense to now back it up. Before I was a little worried about that. So I'd have the Chiefs coming out of the AFC in all likelihood with the offense to back up their defense. In the NFC, it'd have to be hopefully the winner of the NFC North, whether it be the Vikings or the Lions. Potentially Philadelphia as well in the conversation there, although they'd have to go to the winner. So that'd be my playoff predictions. But I guess with that being done, moving on to the other big playoff tournament right now going on. It's college football. Iowa leading Missouri as at the time of this bowl game just happened to pop up. I did want to talk about the Rutgers bowl game, a loss to Kansas State, unfortunately, for the Scarlet Knights. A valiant effort, but they fell short. So they had a 17-point lead. They blew it. Their offense looks good. Antoine Raymond, Deshaun Benjamin. They have some good running backs. Ethan Kalagmanis returning, some solid receivers, some good portal help. Raymond went for 113, but Dylan Edwards, 196 and 2 touchdowns. Avery Johnson, 195, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Ethan, 237, 1 touchdown and a pick on 14 of 32 completions. But after Rutgers really took a lead into the half, 27-17, and even increased to 34-17, Kansas State made good use of the clock to get back into a one-possession game. And even as Rutgers took the lead into the fourth, after a Christian Dremel long punt return, Kansas State was able to get themselves back into the game on both sides of the ball. Greg Schiano said there's a headset issue that might have affected the offensive play calling, but after dominating Kansas State on the ground through the air, just nothing. Kansas State forced Rutgers into 3rd and longs, got them off the field, got the football. A lot of motion, a lot of slippery guys on that football field for the Wildcats, and they were able to make the most of it and, basically claw back into the game after being down 17, get it to a 1-score game. Rutgers took a lead to get it back to 2 scores, but it was Kansas State getting the lead. And once they had the lead 44-41, Rutgers tried to make a drive to get into field goal range, but instead they were denied by the Kansas State defense. So really complimentary football after Rutgers had the lead. Kansas State got some quick scoring. They got some good defense to get Rutgers off the field, more scoring. They really had all the momentum in the second half, aside from the first touchdown by Rutgers and the punt return setting up another touchdown. But it's really Kansas State cutting the lead to 1 score and then going for another 2 touchdowns in succession to get the lead. And they really played good. They got Rutgers off the field. They got them in third and longs, forced them passing plays for Rutgers. And then on offense, they used their playmakers. So Kansas State was favored by 7.5. Or 7, I believe 7, 4.5 in other places. Rutgers covered, but unable to get the win. Their first non-conference loss in quite a while, honestly, since their last bowl game, 2 bowl games ago against Wake Forest. But the Wildcats 9-4, Scarlet Knights fell to 7-6. It could have been a great season for Rutgers, but injuries happened. They were able to turn things around, get into the bowl game, a nice 41-14 stomping of MSU, but it wasn't really meant to be. They're kind of playing up to the level of their competition here, which is good. And hopefully next year they do build on it. They have a defense with Mo Toure coming back. They have pieces on that side of the football that can match the offense. And if they can match the offense, this could be a deadly team, although not a deadly team, a good team, but their schedule does get tougher. Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, 3 teams that are still in the tournament. So uphill battle there for Rutgers, but 7-6 we'll have to do for the Scarlet Knights. Could have been more, could have been less. So I guess Rutgers fans will have to take it in stride. I was happy to see the offense doing really well, the defense not so much, but it was an entertaining bowl game. That's, I think, been the theme of the season: entertaining bowl games, left and right. The Pop-Tarts Bowl, 81 points scored. Iowa State with a 42-41 win over the U, second bowl loss in a row for them. Credit to the Scarlet Knights for doing it last year, although that was a depleted roster. But Cam Ward playing the first half for the NFL Scouts, 190 and 3 touchdowns for Ward. But they pulled him out in the second half. Didn't really have much in their backup Emory Williams, and they take an L. East Carolina getting a win, UConn getting a win. The American's been a really good bowl conference. The Big Ten so far decent. Navy getting a win over Oklahoma. The Hawaii Bowl went to 5 overtimes, I believe. South Florida knocking off San Jose State in 5 overtimes. 2-point conversion. People said you should be watching that game if you're a college football sicko. I guess so. Unfortunately, I did miss that one, but I did see the 6 overtime win by Toledo over Pitt. On the same day of the Rutgers game, 48-46. Toledo stormed the field 3 times after Pitt scores were originally ruled incomplete and then overturned. So this has just been a great bowl season. Even Arkansas State knocking off Bowling Green 38-31. The bowl games have been really good. What hasn't been good so far is the college football playoff first round games. Those were all blowouts, but still exciting to talk about the 12-team playoff joining college campuses for the first time and bringing all the excitement to college football in its highest format. So it's really exciting to see a lot of scrutiny on some of these selections here. And I don't think anyone really did themselves any favors with the way this happened, because all the teams at the bottom from 9 to 12 basically embarrassed themselves. Indiana took an L to Notre Dame, 27-17. The Fighting Irish torched the Hoosiers. So it was really 27-3 with a few minutes left in the game before Indiana scored a couple in garbage time. So Indiana won 11-1. So did the Irish. The fluke loss to NIU for Notre Dame, while Indiana ran through a pretty easy schedule. Their one loss coming to Ohio State, who we'll get to that one in just a second. But Riley Leonard had a solid game. Jeremiah Love did as well, a long rushing touchdown. Jordan Faison with 89. Riley Leonard 201 yards. He had an interception. Jeremiah Love 108 yards, including a 98-yard touchdown there. And then Curtis Rourke 215, 2 touchdowns and a pick. But the run game really shut down for IU. Notre Dame was all over them on the line of scrimmage, which makes me think they'll play well against Georgia. But we'll get to that in just a second. For a better team in the Big Ten, it went a bit differently. Penn State with their first playoff appearance in the 12-team era, something that Nittany Lions fans have been waiting a long time for, absolutely dominating the Mustangs. Kevin Jennings with 3 interceptions, including 2 pick sixes, so he was definitely not ready for the moment. Dominic DeLuca took one back. Tony Rojas took one back. Penn State then started getting the offense going, and by the time SMU put up any points at all, it was strictly in garbage time. Penn State just dominated them, even with their offense not having the best day. Easy win for the Nittany Lions. For all the people saying James Franklin finally won a big game, yeah, I mean, I guess, but Penn State got the easy draw in the bracket here. SMU, no match. So a lot of people are saying Indiana and SMU shouldn't have been in the playoff. And I guess that might be true, but it's not like the other teams did themselves any favors by doing any better. Clemson actually put up the best fight here with Kate Klubnik going for 336, 3 touchdowns and a pick, still falling behind Texas. Quinn Ewers had himself a nice outing, 202, a touchdown, a pick. Jane Blue won 146 on the ground. Gunnar Helm, the tight end. I mean, they got off to a big lead, 28-10. Clemson tried to make a comeback, scoring 2 touchdowns, one late in the third, one early in the fourth, but then Texas with a quick answer, Jane Blue breaking one for 77 yards, and Texas able to overwhelm Clemson and hang on there. Clemson 0-3 against the ACC. Their only close one coming against South Carolina, with Georgia and Texas, the two best, dominating them, but still the most fight. Tennessee absolutely embarrassed themselves. So for all the people saying the SEC should have got more teams into the playoffs, I guess we have our answer on that. A lot of people thought this would be a close game. Ohio State would play right into Tennessee's run defense. Their offense would be good, but instead Ohio State went right through the air, finding Jeremiah Smith for an early strike. Quinshon Judkins in the ground game got going. Travion Henderson had some of the big runs of the day as well. But it was really a show through the air with Will Howard going for 24 of 29, 311 yards, 2 touchdowns and a pick, and Ohio State all over the balls. Tennessee didn't really have much except for their fans talking a lot of trash on Twitter coming up and filling the stadium, doing a good job providing quite a crowd for Tennessee. A lot of orange in that stadium, but the Buckeyes let their play on the field do the talking and absolutely stomped out the Vols. So for any question of whether Ohio State it was a contender after the Michigan loss, and I'd say they were absolutely right in questioning that, but Ohio State definitely bounced back, setting themselves up nicely for a Rose Bowl showdown with the Oregon Ducks, which is going to be a really exciting one. And I think that brings us into our previews of the bowl games here, of the playoff games. Alabama, Michigan to start the day off tomorrow, New Year's Eve at 12 p.m. As we start ramping up into the New Year's game. So a rematch of the Rose Bowl. I would say Alabama should win that one. Michigan looking to build off of their surprising upset of the Buckeyes, knock off the Crimson Tide, but I think Alabama is going to be too much for them. Michigan not playing with basically missing a lot of their starters, including Colston Loveland, Will Johnson, Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham. So they're not going to have Khalil Mullings and Donovan Edwards. So I don't really know what they're planning on doing. They're going to bring in their underclassmen there. So this is not really going to look like a typical game for Michigan. Alabama's obviously going to rest some starters as well, but I think Michigan already depleted on talent relatively, but I think I think Alabama should be able to take care of that one there. I guess that one being said, we'll have to see how that one goes. So, the Citrus Bowl, an exciting one that I was looking forward to between number 15 South Carolina and number 20 Illinois. Some of the best of the rest here. That should be a really good one. Another Big Ten SEC game, as now Mizzou and Iowa tied at 24. And then of course we got Louisville, Washington, the Sun Bowl, CBS game, and Baylor LSU, the Texas Bowl. But where the fun really gets started is the Fiesta Bowl at 7:30. Penn State taking on Boise State. Ashton Genty going for the single season college football record. We talked a lot about Saquon Barkley potentially going for the NFL one, but Ashton Genty, a ridiculous running back, honestly, in my argument, should have won the Heisman Trophy, but Travis Hunter won it for his solid play on both sides of the football, which I don't really agree with, but I could definitely understand it. He's made a lot of plays on both sides of the ball, but we're moving past that. We're in the playoffs now. Penn State taking on Boise State. Boise State, a big underdog. Penn State and Boise State have good history in the game. Penn State 7-0. No team's done better. Boise State 3-0 at the Fiesta Bowl. Genti with 2,497 rushing yards and 29 rushing touchdowns. He can catch passes as well, 116 yards and a touchdown, but 1,889 yards, or 75% of his total yards are after contact. And Penn State is going to have to rely on their tackling, but Penn State is a top 10 rushing defense. I expect them to stack the box. They're Madsen, their quarterback, to beat them through the air. I'm not so sure they can. On the other side of the football, Penn State, Drew Allers looked good. They got two backs of their own, Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, but I think I think it's going to be too much. I think Penn State's going to find a way to move the ball through the air. Boise State is a big sack team. They're second they're second in the country on sacks. But if Boise State does not get home, Boise State actually struggles with coverage. So if Boise State doesn't get home, they do struggle in big pass protection play. So I'd expect Penn State to be able to find a way to move the ball through the air and on the ground. If they can bottle up Ashen Genti even a bit, it's gonna be tough for Boise State to move the ball through the air. I think Penn State's gonna be able to do that. I'd expect Boise State to Boise State to be in the game, but I think Penn State is gonna find their way into the semifinals. Which they're taking advantage of their softer side of the bracket, but I think Penn State, they do have a lot to prove on offense. They did not impress me against Ohio State. They were not able to score an offensive touchdown, but against Oregon they were able to, and they were able to keep up in a shootout. And I think again, even though the game was defensive against SMU, I think they will get their offense going, and they'll need to knock off Boise State. But I think that defense is solid. I think on offense they're going to be able to move the ball against the Broncos. Like I said, Boise State, they either get home or they struggle a bit in coverage. I think Penn State's going to take advantage of that. They're going to move the ball through the air and on the ground. Boise State's just probably going to move it mainly on the ground. I think Penn State will force them into a couple mistakes and get the win. But it could be a close game. I mean, I think Boise State has a chance to, potentially keep it close if they can get the dual threat game going. But I'm expecting them to mainly be forced to try to run it, and they're going to probably try to go through the air because Penn State's going to do a much better job than most teams at shutting down the run. I think they're going to make some mistakes. I think Penn State's going to be able to move the ball. So give me the Nittany Lions, as much as I might not like them. So besides that, the Peach Bowl between Texas and Arizona State. I think this one is. I think this one's probably going to be the most lopsided. Another great running back in college football is Cam Skatibo. I think I don't really know how you say his Cam Skatibo. The dual threat pass catcher and running back, one of the best in the country, number 5 in Heisman Trophy. But the Texas defense is the number one defense. The offensive line for Texas is going to be stout. Quinn Ewers is going to have all the time to get the ball to his playmakers. They got Jaden Blue in the backfield, so I think Texas is going to have no problem moving the football. Is Arizona State going to be able to move it? I think they might be able to with Skatibo. I keep saying his name differently, but I think Texas is going to be too much. I think on defense they're going to be able to slow down Arizona State. I think on offense they're going to be able to move the ball through the air and on the ground, and I think the Longhorns move to the semifinals. That's my most confident pick out of the 4. Besides that, the Rose Bowl, Ohio State taking on Oregon. A really good game between two of the top offenses. Oregon obviously got the win 32-31 against the Buckeyes in a nail biter. Will Howard couldn't slide in time, but in the first matchup there's a lot of defense. A lot of offense. The second time we might even see more offense. Will Howard went for 326 and 2 touchdowns. Dylan Gabriel 341, 2 touchdowns. Jordan James went for 115 and a touchdown. Evan Stewart 149 and a touchdown. Jeremiah Smith 100 and a touchdown. Travion Henderson 87 yards on 10 carries. So just a lot of offense both on the ground and especially through the air. Dylan Gabriel and Oregon burnt Ohio State. Ohio State burnt Oregon secondary. So we'll see a lot of that. I think Ohio State's defense has really tightened up since then. They shut down Nebraska on the goal line. They did that with Oregon too. They shut down Penn State on the goal line. even in the Michigan loss and against Indiana as well. I mean, just a lot of defensive plays by the Buckeyes. They really their defense has been good. Their offense playing at a whole, I guess back to their old level. They really showed out against Tennessee. So I think it's going to be an offensive shootout. I could see it go either way, but I think Ohio State's gonna win. I think they're gonna make a couple. I think they're gonna make a couple plays on defense that Oregon is not gonna be able to, and I think they're gonna get revenge. But I wouldn't be surprised either way. I mean, I think these are the two best teams in college football. Unfortunately, they're playing in the Rose Bowl, but whoever wins, I think, is probably gonna be favored there on out to win the whole thing. The other interesting or intriguing game is going to be the one after that, Notre Dame taking on Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. So don't go anywhere after that Rose Bowl. This one could be an interesting one too, because the Dogs, SEC champions, they've been a little bit sloppy as of late, but even against UMass, Georgia Tech, but locking down a good Texas team, playing with Gunnar Stockton, their backup quarterback, who's I guess kind of a dual threat, but Trevor Etienne, solid ground game. They've got Arian Smith. They've got, of course, their defense. You guys like Malachi Starks. They got a solid. They got a solid defense. They're physical, but so are the Irish. Riley Leonard, a dual threat quarterback. Jeremiah Love, the running back. I mean, Jordan Faison. I think Notre Dame matches up as well as anybody, and especially with their quarterback situation. I think they'll have the advantage in both the run game, with their stout offensive line, and with their quarterback. I think their defense is going to be good enough, even without Riley Mills, to make enough plays to force Gunnar Stockton into some mistakes, and I think Notre Dame's going to be able to get the upset win. So obviously I'm going to be rooting for the Irish, because I don't really like the Dogs for several reasons related to Ohio State, Alabama, just SEC thing as well. But I'm going to be rooting for Boise State. I don't really care too much here, but maybe Arizona State, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. My picks for the round are going to be Penn State, Texas, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. I have an article, but I basically talked about an article for Sports Radio America on my socials, but I basically just brought all the analysis here for the podcast episode. But I mean, I think that's pretty much all we got to talk about on this this episode here. A lot of NFL with the playoff picture in sight. 1 week left. So obviously I have to review that. College football as well. Review the first round and preview the second round. Talked about some of these other bowl games as well. And of course, talked about all the NFL action from the past week and previewing the next week. But in the meantime, this has been another episode of SportsVibe episode 75. I'm your host, Arnav Sarkar. Enjoy the second round of quarterfinal playoff games and the last week of the NFL season. And I'll be there to break down the quarterfinals, preview the semifinals, and preview the NFL playoffs in the next episode, as well as reviewing what happened in Week 18. But in the meantime, this has been another episode of SportsVibe. Happy holidays. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy the playoff, and enjoy the NFL games. And we'll see you next time.